I want to first just say to you, wow. I look at you and I am overwhelmed to have you all sitting here in front of me today. I'll try not to cry through this. But what I want to say is you come from 28 states. We got more than half of the United States represented in this room. And I'm, like, wow. We come from 6 different countries. We have 6 countries and 28 states. And what bonds us is something that none of us asked for. And not just did we not ask for it, but if we could have chosen anything else, I'm sure you would join me in picking another road. But we didn't have a choice about this road. And yet, along the road, we have found each other. And you've found each other in some really amazing and inspiring ways. And what has brought me to the place of bringing us all together is having met you. And I want to talk about today 2 things. First of all, accepting the gifts of widowhood. I know. What gifts, right? Like, who wants them? Take them back. I didn't open them. I left it under the tree. Maybe someone else will pick it up. But we didn't have an option, again, about how we got here. And so I have begun over the last 4 years to think about what has my widowhood brought to me. Not what I asked for, but what has it brought to me. So while I was thinking about what I was going to say to you, the word unimaginable kept coming to me. And how many times have someone said to you, oh, I can't imagine? And you say to yourself, well, I hope you don't have to. Good, I hope you can imagine. I don't want to imagine, too late. And so I looked up the word unimaginable. And I was surprised to find that the synonym is impossible. Now, if impossible and unimaginable are the same thing, then our husbands are alive in the other room, or your wife, or whoever it is you're grieving. There's a wife out there in the other room as well. The people that we've lost are in the other room, because then if unimaginable and impossible are the same thing, then the unimaginable that has happened to us is not possible. But obviously that's not true. And so I started thinking, okay, so let's think about what's unimaginable. What's unimaginable to me is that 7 years ago, in this month, in July, I was in this same spot, exactly, believe it or not, and this room was open, and it was full of aerobic steps. And we were stepping and learning to teach step to a variety of enthusiastic participants. Would you all like to learn some step? We could do that now. Okay, I didn't think I was going to sell that one. But I was at a conference to learn how to teach people to be fit 7 years ago. My husband was alive. He was what I think of as a Superman. He was extremely fit. He loved all things athletic. And I could not imagine standing in front of you today. If you had said to me 7 years ago, you're going to be in that same spot 7 years from now, I would have thought, awesome, I got a presenting spot, teaching step. I would not have thought, I'm going to address a lot of people with a lot of pain, trying to figure out what to do with it. And so, unimaginable, but not impossible. When you came to that first day, when you found out, however you came to it, in whatever way you came to it, that the person you loved was gone, I'm going to guess that the future was unimaginable. Where do I go from here? What does my life look like? Unimaginable. And yet here you are. Now I'm going to ask you this. Could you have imagined sitting in a room full of people who understand what it's like not to be able to imagine? And yet, here we are. And so as I'm walking through this unimaginable journey, thinking to myself, where can we go from here? What can we create? I found in my early widowhood that I didn't have an imagination. It felt to me impossible to imagine. I couldn't imagine what the next day had, let alone the next 5 years. You guys will appreciate this. My fence fell down in my backyard I don't know, 6 weeks after my husband died. Of course it did. Of course the fence fell down. And so, I'm trying to go through the process. I'm thinking, all right, well, I should get 3 bids, right? Like, I should get 3 bids. That's what you do when your fence falls down. So I went and I got my 3 bids, and each one of them said to me, well, how long do you plan to be in this house? And I wanted to punch him in the face. I was like, I don't know how long I'm going to be anywhere. And I'm thinking to myself, I'm trying to tell myself, like, this man does not know your husband's dead. This man does not know your husband's dead. Because I didn't want to tell him my husband was dead, because he might take advantage of the fact that my husband was dead, right? So you're like, don't say it, don't say it, don't say it, and don't cry, and don't let him give you too big of a bid, and then you line them all up. And I just remember thinking, how do people do this? How do people do this? And that's what drove me to look for you. I have been looking for you for 4 years, because this is the phrase I heard. I want you to all just think about whether you heard that. You don't look like a widow. Wow, I wish that worked. I have been told repeatedly, you don't look like a widow, and that's because as widows, we don't have an identity. And when I say widow, I mean widowed people. Widowed people do not have an identity in our culture because we don't embrace it. And why not? Do you run down the street going, I'm widowed? Of course not. And so because we're not doing that, who's going to know? If your next door neighbor lost their spouse and you didn't know your neighbor, would you know they lost their spouse? And so it's been so difficult to find an identity in this that matched who I felt like I was. And as I got to know you, who I felt like you were, who are we? And because it was so difficult for me to answer that question personally, as a group, it was like, oh. But what I did know is what we aren't, right? We aren't under our beds crying all the time. That's only on Tuesdays at 6 a.m. We aren't wearing black all the time. I wore black for 6 weeks because I felt black, but and I still do it sometimes, but it's slimming. What can you do? But we're not all of these things that so many times, and I'm guilty of it myself. Watch yourself. Cover your ears if you see me hitting my chest. I'm guilty of it myself. If someone had said to me before I was widowed, what does a widow look like? I think it might have occurred to me that I could come up with an image. Oh, a widow, let me think about that. And now I realize that there isn't an image. But because we try to fit into the mold sometimes of what we have heard or what we have experienced in our lives when someone who, is in their later years has died, we think to ourselves, oh, that must be what a widow looks like. And then you find yourself widowed and you go, wait a minute, in the mirror. That's what a widow looks like. And that day was a really hard day. When I looked in the mirror and thought, that is what a widowed person looks like, I thought, nuh-uh. No. I don't apply that word to me. I don't want to hear that word. Please don't say that word. And then I had to refinance my house. And I'm doing the paperwork, right? And he's like, checks off, widow. I'm like, why? Why is that necessary? Why do I have to be defined by that? And so I struggled and I struggled and I struggled. I struggled with being defined as a widow. I struggled with not feeling like I was what I thought of as a widow. And then I met you. And that when I say that, I mean I embraced people from every walk of life, from every age group, in 6 or 7 or 8 or 10 different states. And I thought, you are a widow. And yay. Why? Because you're like me. Like, I get you. And all of a sudden, I realized that the power of what we have experienced creates this bond that is unimaginable. And I would walk into someone's house and I'd be like, hi, my name's Michelle. We met on the internet. And would you mind if I come into your house? And we would sit down and there was like 30 seconds of, how are you? I'm good. How are you? How'd your husband die? And it was like, wow, we're into it. Okay. And so, and that happened with every single person. And then when we walked out, we were best friends. I have a ton of best friends. Because that bonds us. That loss bonds us. Whoever it is you lost. And what I discovered is it is also true, no matter who people lost, But I know, all right, so it's not the same when they lost their parent. It's not the same when they lost their dog. How many? I mean, come on now. Somebody said it to you. I know, my dog died last week. And I'm like, I am so sad about your dog, but can we not talk now? Because I don't think I can go there. But what we have here is amazing. Why? Because immediately we get it. And it doesn't matter where you come from. And honestly, it doesn't matter how old you are. I will admit that I thought it would matter. I thought it would matter. It doesn't. It doesn't matter if you're a man or a woman. It doesn't matter if you had life insurance or not. How many people got asked that question? Was there life insurance? I'm like, oh my God. Did you just ask me that? Seriously? Well, why? Because that would make it all better? But in that, it doesn't matter. None of that matters. Situationally, it doesn't matter. And what we'll discover this weekend, it doesn't matter what country you're from either. It doesn't matter where you come from. We experience a bond that other people don't experience. But we have a secret too. And the secret is there's a real power in that bond. And we have an opportunity to use that. Unimaginable. Unimaginable. Because what gift could you get from your widowhood? I'll tell you the first gift for me was gratitude. Okay, what? And I have to say that when I began thinking about my widowhood like this, I started asking myself, all right, what are the gifts? And gratitude came back again and again and again. And I'm thinking, I'm grateful my husband's dead. I'm grateful my husband's dead. This isn't working. I did love him. I wanted to keep him. I was grateful for the people in my life. We have different, I know there's variations of this. Some of you were well supported. Some of you were isolated. Some of you had one person who got it. But how grateful were you for that one person? And how grateful were you for the people who are around you, who continue to be around you, who continue to love you through what has been, I'm going to guess here, the hardest thing you've ever done. The hardest thing I have ever done, hands down. And I was grateful. And so I look at that and think, not just grateful for the present, but I find myself grateful for things that happen to me daily in a way that I wasn't before. Because suddenly it's like, you know what, that doesn't always happen. And you know what, it might happen tomorrow. So I'm grateful. I find myself to be grateful. Does anybody want fortitude? Like really? Do we want fortitude? Do we want to be able to stick it out day after day? This is a gift I have to say that I would have rather left under the tree or wherever in something that could be on the birthday stand somewhere else. But what I discovered is that I can get up every day and that you can get up every day. And I remember how many of you had the experience of like the next day and it's like, the sun is shining. Why? Why is that sun shining? Somebody didn't tell it. My husband died. But I had that serious why is the sun shining? I went to a store, not immediately, I don't even remember when, and I remember the chipper girl going, how are you today? And I thought, I'm going to kill you. Oh wait, that's not okay. That immediate sense of like the world is not as it should be, is not as it should be. It wasn't this way yesterday. What am I supposed to do? Day after day, the sun rose, and day after day, I had to find a way to get out of bed. And when I tell people, we're here, great, we have something to celebrate, and they look at me like, I said you got out of bed. And some days, it's not a celebration. It's a celebration to be able to get yourself out of that bed. Because a large reason why you used to get out of the bed no longer is next to you in the bed. That's a problem. But you still have to find a way to urge yourself out. And so what I discovered about myself is that I have a fortitude I did not know. And I know that you all have a fortitude that you did not know you had before you lived this experience. Whatever it's come to you, in whatever lost form that is, and you think to yourself, how do I get here? I did it. Do I have to do it again tomorrow? And you know what? Taking it just that one bite at a time, like Joy said, one bite at a time is how we develop that kind of fortitude.